I want to start by saying thank you to both Peter Gray and Alison Gillespie for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to do this today and share a room with so many people that have a common interest, and that is bicycles and advocating and civic engagement. I want to tell you guys today about the bike bus, which is something that I'm doing for my community right now for a couple of years now. And before I do that, maybe just a little bit of an introduction, hopefully a short one. So my name is Ema Perez. I am originally from Argentina, Buenos Aires. And though Buenos Aires, if you were lucky enough, you might have heard that Buenos Aires, Argentina is this modern city, cosmopolitan of sorts, but that was not my environment. I grew up in a quite poor neighborhood with very limited resources, but in a sense, we had a very strong sense of community, which is something that I carry with me always. Um, we all knew our neighbors. Our neighbors owned the butcher shop, the flower shop, the bakery, everything. We have fresh produce. So in a lot of aspects, these were what urban planners like myself refer to complete communities or 15-minute communities. Like you can carry on with your daily life just between a short radius from your home. And the beauty of it also was that my neighborhood was, although it was poor and with limited resources, say, not paved streets, no running water, and a lot of public services were limited. What we had going on was that our city was laid out, and our town was laid out on a perfect grid with intersecting streets, sidewalks connected one neighbor to the next. So it was very easy to connect your neighbors, get to know them, and then get along when you go to the bakery and it's your neighbor and your friend, or someone that plays soccer with your dad, or someone that shares tea with your mom, or gossip and that kind of thing. So that sense of community still with me today. And so not to give you a whiplash, this is Argentina in the 1980s, all right? So this is because some time ago, things have changed and improved, but these were the circumstances with me growing up in the 80s. And not to give you a whiplash again, I'm sorry, we're gonna fast forward to the pandemics and me raising a family here in beautiful Silver Spring, Maryland. During the pandemic was a challenging time, and that was a point where I decided that I wanted to make sure that my kids have something that I had growing up, which was belonging to a group of good neighbors, have a sense of community, know their friends, and share a common interest. So through civic engagement and my civic association and my desire to foster community and my interest in bikes, is that I decided to organize these bike rides that Allison was referring to. These bike rides were just completely an idea that I had, and that I just wanted to get people together and perhaps get people to take their bikes out of their sheds, get them fixed, pump air on those tires, and get out and cycle with friends, other kids, and people that perhaps they didn't know initially. So I did that, and I've been doing this for now close to 4 years or so. And these rides are becoming popular. I do it 3 times a year, and we get neighbors from my community, neighboring communities, and it gets a good time because kids get to ride in a group, and as we know, it's safety in numbers when you ride bikes. So this was actually quite successful, and it helped me give a common interest around bicycles, and to make people familiar that you can do lots of things with bikes. You can get together with friends, share an afternoon, a good time, coffee and donuts. It's also a regular feature of my rides. We had 3 rides every year. Now, this actually helped. We got to know a lot of people, a lot of neighbors, share laughs and stuff like that. But when my kids were introduced to public school, I decided to take another extra step. And this is when the idea of the bike bus came to fruition. I wanted to perhaps, now that I have an interest in my community on riding bikes, recreationally, I wanted to add another layer to it, now that my kids are in public school, to get kids to ride bikes to school on a regular basis. Next slide. And for that, we have a very convenient video that will introduce the idea that you perhaps might be familiar with bike buses, but I want to go a little further than that. And though my interest on getting kids to ride bikes to school was somewhat new to me, the concept was not. It's something that existed, it was the bike bus. For me, it was to bring that to my community. And the person that was in the video, San Balto, what's the person that you Google or research a little bit about bike buses, he always pops out. And he's now a dear friend to our bike bus too. He grew up in the area. But I consider you guys a perfect audience. So my goal for today is to raise awareness, for you guys to help me spread the word about bike buses, and to hopefully connect with someone and get more bike buses going in Maryland. Next slide. Because I do feel like you guys might have heard of bike buses, but oftentimes there's a bit of a jump. Okay, how do you get one going? What things do you need? And it's fairly simple. You kind of don't need to open your wallet. You can do it on your own. You can always use some help, obviously. And there's a chance for community and common interest. But today, number one is a route. A schedule is quite important. School operates in a schedule, and so do our mornings too. And a channel of communication. In addition, a few rules and a code of behavior always helps and is critical. And of course, volunteers. The beauty of the bike bus, I think, is there's always a role for someone to help and be involved. Next slide, please. The route might be one of the things that might be a little bit challenging, but the advantage when it comes to elementary schools versus middle schools and high school is the area of service. Elementary schools tend to have a smaller area of service, which makes biking to school more manageable, okay? So, and when you draft a route, or you help someone draft a route, what you're trying to do is to connect the school to the different pockets of the neighborhood. You can start small with one or two and go as the interest grows. But the idea is not necessarily to have a segment that connects to all the houses, but to bring a segment of the bike bus route closer to some homes that might be a little farther out. In addition to that, what's very important is to prioritize safety. And one way to do is to select roads that give you a good amount of visibility, that it goes in both sense. Perhaps, like, obviously we want kids to see bikes, the kids to see vehicles, and vehicles to see the kids on bikes. We are a big group, and it's easy for them to notice us, but it's quite important that you set yourself on the right path if you start to choose or identify those roads that give you optimal visibility. In addition to that, is something that I discovered is that, and you might know this, is that right turns on bicycles are much more safer than left turns. So if you can do that, and you can insert as many right turns, your route will be considerably safer in the sense that you are not exposing kids to oncoming traffic when you make a left turn. Left turns are obviously unavoidable, but if you keep them on check, you're also starting out on the right foot. And due to like the landscape of our state, Silver Spring is no stranger to hills. So you might encounter hills, and don't let those hills discourage you. You can still use them to advantage. And for example, we in our neighborhood, Allison might know this, we have several hills. So what you can do is use those hills on the direction where the kids have to cycle down rather than upwards, and find an alternative route to climb those hills through different streets. And considering this is elementary school, it's quite interesting group of kids that you have there. You have kids that are nearing graduation from elementary school in 5th grade, but you also have small kids riding on 16-inch wheel bicycles. So it's very critical and important to keep the peloton in a tight formation is to have certain stops along the route. And that way you give the chance to the smaller kids to have time to catch up and rejoin the group, because you do want to have a tight formation. And another thing that plays a huge role in bike buses is the frequency. The frequency of the rides will give you opportunities to make changes or improvements and adapt as the interest in your bike bus increases. And it's always a huge plus to acknowledge and use the existing infrastructure. For example, our bike bus in Silver Spring has a large group that comes from Sligowood's neighborhood. And for them to get close to the school, they need to cross University Boulevard, which is a very busy road. And the best way to go about it is to use this existing traffic light. This gives you also an opportunity to incorporate certain aspects of advocacy. And also, when you're approaching the school, ideally you use ramps to get over the curbs to enter the school campus. The schedule is another very important part, and you basically can choose that based on the number of people you can convince to jump on this adventure with you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a huge number of people. You can start with a handful of volunteers that can help you draft the route, but also select the day. For our group, Fridays is a big day because it's a day that I telework, and so coincides with a lot of parents also volunteers. So you start with an ideal day because you ensure the biggest numbers of volunteers. They're going to give you a hand on keeping the group safe and keeping the kids in check. So select the day that works the best for your group. In addition to that, you obviously don't be afraid of starting small. Your group might start really small, but the consistency and keeping things on a schedule gives optimal chances to grow your group. Yeah, another big truth and is that perhaps you guys don't have kids in elementary at this stage anymore, but getting kids to school is quite difficult. But we have noticed getting the kids to school is fairly easy on the days that we have bike bus. The kids are more ready to get rolling, they can leave the house, and you can use that as an advantage. The quicker you get the kids to school, the quicker you can start your day. So for that, it's very important also to have a good and consistent schedule, which makes it easier for people to plan their days accordingly. And also, what's quite important, a tighter schedule also helps kids to get to school on time, and perhaps also kids are more critical, they need to get to school in order to get on a bus to go to a different school, which is the case often with our school, with a handful of kids. Another important aspect to consider concerns the element. You're trying to establish a schedule. You also try to understand under which circumstances you will say there's no bike bus today because the roads are very icy, or it's very cold and unsafe, or visibility or precipitations are making cycling safely challenging or impossible. So you have to kind of determine under which circumstances you're going to cancel the bike bus. And it's sad and everything, but there's always another bike bus the next week. A channel of communication is critical to keep everyone in the loop. And what oftentimes works is you can use existing places where people communicate, being that the listserv on your community or your neighborhood, or the PTA for your school, or the civic association, which were all the channels that we use. You try to reach out and spread the word about the bike bus using those channels. But at the same time, you don't want to bring the entire bike bus conversations, to those channels, because people start to like, blah, blah, blah. So you create your own channel of communication with only the bike bus folks and parents. For us, you can choose whether that be an email chain or another listserv group. For us, WhatsApp, it works out quite well. And so WhatsApp has many advantages for us to get people to join. You can share a QR code, which is what I have in my car for the bike bus. And then in that way, it's a very dynamic way to coordinate, answer questions, and share knowledge, and create community as well. And yeah, initially, the bike bus oftentimes involves a lot of answering the same questions because people are joining the group and might be unfamiliar, might want to clear some things up, but eventually your group grows and people help each other answering questions and guiding through whatever challenge they might have. It's also a helpful place to where parents can say, I cannot ride the bike bus today, but my kid really wants to. Can someone else keep an eye on it? That works. This is the sense of community, once again, they decided to develop in this group. I consider our bike bus very fun, very special, but every bike bus is different. Your bike bus might not have all the features that we have, but don't let that get on the way. just work on getting the interest in your community and let your bike bus become what it becomes based on the interest of the folks there, the character of the neighbors, the culture of your community, other aspects. For us, it's typically a party. And that sets the right tone, being that it's on Fridays and all that. What's important when having a group ride is you have to have certain rules or code of behavior. I'm more leaning to use the word code of behaviors. Rules, yes, but you have to set a set of tips to keep your kids and grown-ups safe, because unfortunately, and you might be familiar, when you're riding a peloton, one kid goes down, boom, 10 kids go down. So for that, there are a handful of simple rules. One is the ride pace, which again is very important to consider. We have kids that are riding on tiny bikes, no gears, maybe just a rear brake or a front brake, and kids riding on 26-inch wheels. Different paces, different speeds, different behaviors. So it's very important to emphasize, and it's easier for us, for our bike bus, we call it a party, is that this is not a race. Getting ahead of the group will just only kill the music. So you have to stay with your group. You have to acknowledge there's younger cyclists in your group, and we have to keep a certain pace. And so for that, you can use that as a tagline. You can use the habit of just cutting the music. We actually have to do it quite often sometimes, but it works. You get ahead of me. I'm the bike leader, and so I go on the front. If you get ahead of me, poof, the music goes off. And the vibe changes immediately, and the kids go, ooh, comes back. Our bike bus started small, but eventually grew thanks to regularity and my neighbors and that shared interest in bicycles to be a group of like about 60 to 70 kids and grown-ups. So that was a big group. So we started from being all the kids in just in a few yards, the entire bus encompassed in just a few yards, to now being more than a block or two sometimes. So I am deaf. So what's quite helpful to keep the pace and to know when you have to slow down or stop, in addition to the grouping spots, we have our sweeper use a whistle and call my attention when I have to stop because either someone went down, which happens and falls, or we're going a little too fast. So those are the things that you might want to consider and bring to your attention when the bike bus is taking shape in your community. As the lead bike, and the route has been shared to the bike bus already, you might still have kids that are unfamiliar with the route, which is so. In every ride, you still using the hand signals to say, we're turning left here, we're stopping here, we're turning right. It's a good habit to develop in the kids to familiarize hand signals, and it's also with kids that are just joining for the first time to know which way are they going to go and avoid incidents and avoid kids facing oncoming traffic. Another very important rule is this is one that maybe I can use some help with you guys and see what works well, is that I have to remind my kids to always stay on the right side of the road and away from oncoming traffic, which is a scenario that is quite scary and challenging, but again, there's some safety in numbers. Vehicles see the bike bus with 60 or 70 kids and adults riding on the road, but we always want to have a positive interaction with vehicles. We want vehicles to be able to navigate the neighborhood, and we want our bikes to be able to also get to school on time. So one constant rule is just to have the kids right on the right side of the road and have the grown-ups be on the further side of the lane, and always use hand signals to keep the kids away from oncoming traffic. Our neighborhood has some busy streets. It also has a public bus riding through it. So those are things that you want to consider and factor in when you're developing your route and also using your rules of behavior. And kids like to have fun, and it's a party too and everything. But it is important they know that it's not the kind of ride to do tricks. Yes, some of them can ride with hands-free and all that, but that can lead to an accident, and poof, you got a bunch of kids and a bunch of Band-Aids that you have to whip out. So, no tricks. This is not the place for tricks, not the place to ride fast. Ride in a predictable manner, be predictable, have awareness of your surroundings. This is not a quick race, so you just keep some distance. These simple rules honestly keep the group safe. We have had incidents in our group, and those things are unavoidable. We have a large number of kids, but the number of incidents, when you consider the frequency and the size of a group, is quite small. And you cannot downplay the magic of a Band-Aid. It might be the biggest spill, fall, nothing is broken, and you whip up a Band-Aid and the kid goes from crying to like, I'm all good now. So it's a good thing to also have handy. Next slide, please. Volunteers. This is what's important to get your bike bus going well. Again, repetition is another thing that goes in your benefit. The volunteers are always helpful. So in that way, getting a bike bus going every Friday becomes easier because you can delegate people to certain specific roles. But again, you can start small. And you can include a lot of different people. The big difference between our bike bus and Sam Baltu's bike bus, which is, I think it's middle schoolers in that group, is that he has a huge number of volunteers, which is something that I really admire. And you can include your volunteers in your community of all kinds. You can be cyclists, you can be seniors or retired neighbors. It can be a crossing guard to alert vehicles that the bike bus is rolling by. And you can also include bike shops to as a source of business and help you bikes in an optimal shape. There's certainly a role for everyone. For us, making a playlist is something that's a weekly challenge, but this is the place where you find out where the theater kids are. When you select a playlist that involves musicals, boom, you get a bunch of suggestions, so you don't have to, fight with those ideas so much. And it's another revenue for another venue for generating community, adding a little layer of fun and surprise to the bike bus. Another huge element that I think you must consider incorporating in your bike bus is the presence of a sack wagon, which a lot of people might be familiar. But when it comes to the bike bus, the sack wagon has a slightly different role. And some of those roles can be easily understand, but other times you have to consider that you're dealing with the smaller kids, cyclists that are just becoming stronger. And our bike bus is in a sack wagon oftentimes is what we call the kid retriever. If a kid gets too tired, which is not uncommon, you can have him hop on the sack wagon and complete the route. No challenge there. It's a confidence booster in the sense that some kids are not quite strong enough yet, initially, because the repetition aspect of it results in kids getting stronger gradually. Every week, another kid can make the hills all the way up. In the case they can't just yet, there is a sack wagon to save, and get you to school. You hop in, the bike goes in the back, and you're good to go. And as a transition mobile, some of the smaller kids in our group, there's a lot of siblings riding on the bike bus, and some others that really want to yet, but they're not quite ready yet. So the sack wagon is a vehicle that exposes the kids. Right in the sack wagon, they can see the route, they can see their friends or their brother or siblings, and become familiar with the idea and how challenging can it be. But eventually, a lot of those kids riding on the sack wagon decide, okay, I am ready. And they start riding the entire route. And also, the sack wagon is super important, like I say. Gives you a role to parents that perhaps are not necessarily a cyclist or cannot cycle anymore, but they can have a very important role as being the sack wagon driver. And the one of the most important is that the sack wagon acts as an important buffer between our group and the vehicles navigating the neighborhood. We don't want vehicles trying to pass our bicycles, so we have a sack wagon, and you can do and tag it the sack wagon so people driving behind it can identify that this is a vehicle and there are bikes in front of it. Do not pass. So you can decide how much riding you want to include in your sack wagon. So to get the bike bus, there's some basic amount of equipment And again, oftentimes might be things that you have at home. Again, you don't have to get your wallet out, or you could. But again, very important to have is a first aid kit. Band-aids are magical sometimes. Speakers for us are very important. We get the music going, and kids like that aspect of it. It makes it more indifferent for kids and for adults. And yeah, this is another aspect where you can reach out to different county resources because it is important to have visibility and to consider that not always it's going to be sunny when you're riding your bike. So reflective vests are a very valuable asset for your bike bus. So not a bad idea to reach out to MCDOT when you need, or any other department that can provide you that kind of thing, or you can buy it on your own. Whistles and walkie-talkies are quite valuable too, because if your bike bus gets big enough where you're taking over a couple blocks, you kind of want to know if it's time to slow, time to stop, or someone fell down. And so best way to communicate is perhaps a whistle or a walkie-talkie, which is quite helpful. Next slide. So all this to say, why is a bike bus so important? I think it's a huge vehicle to have. Number one, grow interest in bicycles. Number one, create a sense of community. Another aspect is that you're integrating kids into bikes on a regular basis. I think one of the biggest takeaway for me personally, I'm not a person that is anti-car or hates cars, but a lot of these kids are growing up with an awareness of riding their bikes to their neighborhood. And a lot of these kids are just like 5 years away from getting a driver's license. So what I think is very important, it must be acknowledged, is that these kids eventually are going to get behind the steering wheel. And when they do that, they have many Fridays, or whichever day you decide to get the bike bus going, where they saw the road from a cyclist's perspective. So when it's time for them to drive, they're going to have a certain awareness and keep an eye for cyclists. I think that's very, very important. In addition to that, the regularity of the bike bus rides gives not only kids but grown-ups regular opportunities and exposure to bicycles, and it's another way to gain fitness, overcome challenges, because we have parents even that were having a hard time with riding for 4 miles with us. But the repetition of it every week, they were getting stronger and stronger and having an easier time. And they realized, okay, now I can really ride maybe for 5 or 10 miles. So there's a huge aspect of that. Another thing they must be acknowledged, and I think you guys might see the value of this, is a great vehicle for positive engagement, for policy making, advocating, because now you have a huge group, or hopefully a huge group of kids that are being exposed to the roads. And I think it's a great place to generate positive engagement with elected officials, police departments, fire departments, and to have them be part of this bike bus maybe gives us exposure to see what a bike ride to school can be, and what it can represent for the community. So that was my goal. I hope you guys have learned what the bike bus is, those of you didn't know, and what things are helpful to get one going in your community. And that if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to help you with those, because it's been going on for our neighborhood for about 3 years. And another way that I want to continue with the positive engagement is we have like many special guests riding with us, just to give them the exposure to what the bike bus is, what is important aspects of getting to school safely. And we have, for example, Representative Congressman Jamie Raskin, Will Jawando, Kristen Mink, a bunch of different people, even baseball players. We had the Silver Spring Tacoma Park Thunderbolts joining us, And so it's a great way to gain support and engagement. I think if you have any questions, I'm ready for it. Thank you.
Oh.
So
So one of our impediments as a volunteer advocacy organization, being a sponsor, has been insurance and liability.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like this one is county sponsored.
No.
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 Who's the sponsor?
Just the parents decide, and they can choose to ride or not. It's not a. I want to say currently, it's not county sponsored. But I'm hoping with enough awareness, we can make these kind of rides part of some kind of for some policies around it to make it easier. But right now, it's all volunteer led. Yeah.
But you're a county employee.
Yep.
But you're just doing it as a gap.
Yeah. This is not a county sponsor. This is me talking to you as a parent and someone that enjoys riding bikes, and someone that wants to make the idea of the bike bus. It's actually highly attainable and not necessarily a very complicated one, I hope.